Open-world games are a popular genre, and for good reason. They offer tons of things to do and let players get lost, just experimenting with a wide-open sandbox. While there have been tons of incredible open-world games over the years, this generation of gaming has undoubtedly offered the best. Let's take a look at 30 of the best open-world games of the generation, ranked from good to the very best, starting with number 30. Mad Max. Veering away from massive open-world destruction into post-apocalyptic vehicular exploration, Mad Max was an odd turn for Avalanche Studios. It was about upgrading your car, the magnum opus, and taking on convoys. It was about assaulting bases and brawling with baddies. There were the unoriginal side quests, sure, but the sheer expanse of its rolling dunes and spectacle of the vehicular combat helped Mad Max stand out. Just Cause 3. Just Cause 3 isn't a perfect game. It launched with a litany of performance issues and seemingly missed the charm of its predecessor. What it did offer was chaos, lots and lots of chaos. Infinite C4, the ability to grapple and tether multiple objects together, surfing all over vehicles and aircraft, you name it. You could even call in rebel assistance to get whatever vehicles and weapons you wanted in your mad crusade for destruction. Ghost Recon Wildlands. Before launch, Ghost Recon Wildlands was lambasted for watering down the series' classic formula. It also had glitches and bugs galore. That being said, traversing the open world with friends and causing havoc was fun. Assaulting outposts and hunting for guns across Bolivia was also a blast, especially as you acquired leads on your next target. Ubisoft supported the title over the long term, adding new features and modes, including the ability to run solo, and even crossed over with other franchises like Rainbow Six and Splinter Cell. It's not a perfect open world or stealth title, but Ghost Recon Wildlands had its addictive loop. Sunset Overdrive. You can say what you want about Sunset Overdrive's aesthetic and how cringe its characters could be. However, this was an open world littered with fun things to do, driven by amazing movement and weapon mechanics. Chaining together wall runs, bounces, and grinds to blow up foes, light them on fire, or call in orbital lasers. It probably wasn't the biggest open world out there, but in terms of pure, unadulterated fun, it's worth checking out. Middle-earth: Shadow of War. Ambition lies at the heart of Middle-earth: Shadow of War, the ambition to take the previous game's Nemesis system and conflicts to a much larger scale. Build your orc army, assault forts and partake in grand multi-stage battles. Tackle vengeful nemesises while also sowing discord. Granted, Shadow of War had a hefty post-game grind, and it didn't help that Monolith Productions introduced loot boxes for the primary gear chase, which were later removed. But if you loved the gameplay loop of Shadow of Mordor and didn't mind the bizarre story, Shadow of War delivered in spades. Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition. We all probably walked into Sleeping Dogs expecting a Grand Theft Auto clone set in Hong Kong. What we got was an excellent brawling system that aped the best of free-flow combat while introducing its own spin. We got cinematic chases with the best driving and firing systems till date. That's not even counting the story, which delivered a compelling Infernal Affairs-style undercover cop narrative. The world itself was full of interesting things to do, and while not having the most amount of detail, it was still fun to skirt both sides of the law on a whim. Batman Arkham Knight. Rocksteady Studios' Batman Arkham Knight is a fitting send-off to what was perhaps the best series of superhero games ever made. The massive world of Gotham City became Batman's playground, and while it had monotonous tank combat, it also had awesome chase sequences, the responsive free-flow combat, and a riveting tale of dueling personalities in Batman's psyche. None of this even accounts for the various cases you took on to hunt down Batman's villains or the Riddler trials that felt like their own side game. The gorgeous visuals highlighting Gotham's griminess and insanity in equal measure were just icing on top. Metro Exodus. While initially starting out as your usual romp through the tunnels, surviving against the horrors of mutants, Metro Exodus ventures into something bigger. You enter the Caspian Sea, searching for water and fuel, embarking through a deserted wasteland. Eventually, you start exploring rundown ships, clearing out horrifying foes, and scrounging for all manner of materials. It's only the start of this seasonal journey, and while the open world sections could be improved, Metro Exodus still represented a compelling post-apocalyptic romp. Watch Dogs 2. The first game may have felt underwhelming, but Ubisoft picked up the slack in Watch Dogs 2, crafting an endearing recreation of San Francisco's Bay Area. Unlike the previous game, Watch Dogs 2 felt more liberating, allowing players to complete missions of their choosing to accrue the required number of DedSec followers. The missions themselves were also a nice mix of infiltration, hacking, combat, and stealth. Perhaps most importantly, the driving was completely overhauled, making the city a joy to actually explore. Dying Light: The Following Enhanced Edition. While the base game at launch was nothing special, Techland's Dying Light evolved into an entirely different beast altogether over time. Which significantly opened up the endgame and weapon possibilities, we got The Following, a massive expansion with new missions, a compelling new story, and dune buggies. Even if the side quests aren't anything revolutionary, the feeling of running across rooftops or through fields, evading zombies by the power of parkour, and struggling to survive is equal to none. XENOBLADE Chronicles 2. XENOBLADE Chronicles 2 can take some time to warm up to, especially with regards to its characters and storytelling. Leaving aside the complexity of its blade system and RPG combat, the world of Allrest is simply massive in scope, teeming with events, quests, and enormous monsters to fight. The sense of scale is ever impressive as you traverse these massive titans, diving into the depths for new materials or hunting for upgrades. Far Cry 3 Remastered. Okay, so Jason Brody is unequivocally one of the worst protagonists ever, but Far Cry 3 Remastered, on top of including one of the best villains ever in Voss, offers an utterly compelling version of the tropical open world from previous Far Cry titles. Wingsuiting, clearing outposts, which felt significant rather than copy-pasted across the world, using only a bow and arrow, going wild with a flamethrower. Far Cry 3 was full of awesome moments in both its story and its side missions. Borderlands 3. Gearbox Software significantly upped the ante with world size in Borderlands 3 and introduced a number of different planets to explore. They may not feel all that different structurally, but the number of side quests and memorable characters, from the non-violent but secretly bloodthirsty monk on Athenas to the coffee-addicted Lorelei on Promethea. If nothing else, there are enough interesting bosses, secrets, and Easter eggs to make exploring every inch of these planets worth it. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Though it was meant to make up for the shortcomings of Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag felt like much more. It was a love letter to the age of pirates, full of massive landmasses and seas to traverse, hidden treasures to find and ruins to loot, and of course some stellar naval battles. Black Flag may have still had some of the annoying tailing missions of previous games, but the overall narrative and gameplay loop felt like a big leap forward for Assassin's Creed. Dragon Age Inquisition. Dragon Age 2 wasn't, for all intents and purposes, a terrible game, but many felt disappointed by its reduced scale and ambition. As such, BioWare set out to make Dragon Age Inquisition much bigger as you reform the Inquisition to fight the forces of evil. Yes, there were still some annoying fetch quests, but Inquisition also featured powerful dragons in each region with their own challenges, interesting lore and side quests that provided more information about the world, and an excellent plot that depended on your decisions. Plus, the companions were genuinely endearing, whether it was Cassandra's stoic nature or the Iron Bull's laid-back demeanor. Marvel's Spider-Man. You know how it makes you feel, and you know that despite some of the open world tropes like fetch quests, tailing missions, and whatnot, Marvel's Spider-Man is simply incredible. The movement was a natural evolution over Sunset Overdrive, flawlessly incorporating the momentum and speed of Spider-Man's web-slinging with wall running and high jumping. The combat was fast and responsive while presenting tons of different options with the various suits. Manhattan itself came alive in extraordinary ways, from the pedestrians walking the streets high-fiving our hero to the birds flying overhead. In short, it was a great game and well worth your time. Final Fantasy XV. With a long and arduous development cycle, Final Fantasy XV seemed like it would never release. It offered an expansive world in Eos with its monster hunts, side quests, and gorgeous towns to explore. Perhaps the linchpin of the experience was Noctis's relationship with Gladio, Prompto, and Ignis as they camped out in the wilderness, trained, cooked dishes, and cataloged their journey together. Even with all of its imperfections, the true journey of Final Fantasy XV was bonding with its main cast, and it excelled strongly in that department. Metal Gear Solid V: The Phantom Pain. It may not have the greatest open world, but Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain stands out for a variety of other reasons. Aside from the plot with its strong characterization and presentation, say what you will about how incomplete the story was, the real strength of the game was its freedom. There were tons of different ways to infiltrate camps and complete missions, from rocket arms to cardboard box sliding, or just going in guns blazing. Plus, there's the ability to order companions to do things like take down helicopters and the like. Fallout 4. Fallout 4 pursued an interesting gameplay model that not every player would have enjoyed. It was about exploration, combat, and looting, with that last step usually concerning junk for one's settlements or weapons. The shooting was a lot more refined, but this was still the same retro-futuristic aesthetic mixed with the shady Vault-Tec dealings, mysterious haunted dig sites, and intriguing NPCs to interact with. Love it or hate it, getting lost in Fallout 4's world could be fun if you enjoyed its core gameplay loop. Assassin's Creed Origins. If Black Flag was a huge leap forward, Assassin's Creed Origins wiped the slate clean. It introduced a massive open world set in ancient Egypt with ruins, pyramids, towns, and all manner of desert in between. Origins went back to the very beginning of the Assassin Order, showcasing the journey of Bayek as he battled the Order of the Ancients to avenge his son. This was the first game in the series to implement heavier action RPG elements as players collected loot while stealth felt downplayed. Regardless, for the stories it told and the intriguing world offered, Assassin's Creed Origins was a satisfying reboot. Tom Clancy's The Division 2. Some may prefer the old ways, trudging through the snows of post-apocalyptic Manhattan. However, Tom Clancy's The Division 2 offered so much more in one cohesive looter-shooter package. It did this without sacrificing all the additional details, all the hidden quests, secrets, and hunters that dotted Washington, D.C. Whether you were rebuilding civilian camps, trudging through the tunnels hunting for clues, or battling in the Air and Space Museum, The Division 2's world felt alive and packed with things to do. No Man's Sky. At launch, No Man's Sky felt more like a glorified tech demo. Several big updates later, and it feels like it lived up to its initial promise of far-reaching space odysseys. Planets are still procedurally generated, but feel much more distinct and teeming with amazing life forms, or they could be hellish pits that drag you into despair. You can purchase freighters, engage in massive space battles, or just settle down and build a base in the clouds. You can also finally meet other people randomly and team up on adventures, perhaps even visit their own bases. Forza Horizon 4. The seasonal approach had the potential to feel gimmicky in Forza Horizon 4. Thankfully, Playground Games didn't compromise on the essentials, like attention to detail when portraying Edinburgh or other Great Britain districts, or the 450 cars at launch that felt just as amazing as previous games. Being able to race across a variety of disciplines without restrictions in many races also felt awesome. The signature showcase events, including the one dedicated to Halo, felt right, and the changing seasons actually altered the world in fun, meaningful ways besides just providing new activities to do. Horizon Zero Dawn. Guerrilla Games' first shot at an open-world title gave us hunts against robot dinosaurs in a post-apocalyptic setting. What more could you want? Aloy's story formed the core of Horizon Zero Dawn, but the world held it all together, featuring mysterious cauldrons to brave, enormous robots to hunt, giant tallnecks that acted as living towers to conquer, and so much more. Say what you will about some of its writing, but the world itself was beautifully realized, both in its details and presentation. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition. Technically, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim was released in 2011, but the Special Edition, with the benefit of mod support, except if you're on the Switch, ensures it stays relevant to today. Even if you hate Bethesda from the bottom of your heart, there's no denying that Skyrim was a trailblazer in the open-world genre. Its massive world, full of interesting nooks, crannies, and dungeons, along with a plethora of interesting characters and lore, still feels overwhelming to this day. And of course, there's no denying the sheer amount of fun to be had as the Dragonborn as you Fusro Da things left and right. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. After Assassin's Creed Origins, Ubisoft took to doubling down on its new open-world action RPG approach. Assassin's Creed Odyssey aspires to more with numerous sagas of the Misthios as they struggle to reunite their family, while also discovering their own purpose. with a much more responsive combat system, interesting loot and abilities leading to different builds, naval combat, outposts, conquest battles, mercenaries, and so much more. Assassin's Creed Odyssey could keep you busy for a long time, and that's without the extensive expansions and free post-launch quests. Grand Theft Auto V. Before Red Dead Redemption 2, Rockstar was under pressure to deliver another eagerly awaited open-world follow-up in Grand Theft Auto V. To say they delivered is an understatement. The world of Los Santos, from the pedestrians to the seafront and realistic effects, almost felt unreal. In true GTA fashion, it offered an epic crime story with tons of little side plots managed by all kinds of wacky characters. One moment you'd be fighting aliens with a Gatling gun. The next, you'd be assassinating targets from a rooftop or killing a social media company founder with a phone. Grand Theft Auto V is still one of the most feature-packed and immersive open-world games today, and that's saying something. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. One could go on and on about the brilliance that is The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, from its serene atmospherics to its gorgeously realized world. The sheer sense of freedom, of barreling off into the unknown with reckless abandon, just to find something unique or amazing, never gets old. Even with its lack of true Zelda dungeons and annoying weapon durability mechanics, Zelda Breath of the Wild is simply fantastic, whether you're surfing down frozen peaks, tussling with dragons, or playing with dogs. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. You could nitpick the bugs, but at the end of the day, CD Projekt Red's The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is remembered for all the things it got right. Its world is brimming with depth and interesting side quests, some featuring incredible writing and plot pacing. Geralt's quest to find Ciri while combating the Wild Hunt takes us on a journey that spans Novigrad, Velen's No Man's Land, Skellige, and more. Even if the combat was a bit lackluster, the game is worth playing for its characterization and writing. Red Dead Redemption 2. Over 25 million copies sold, universal praise from critics. Red Dead Redemption 2 had an inhuman amount of hype behind its release and still delivered. Focusing on the tale of Arthur Morgan and the Vanderlyn gang as we witness the downward spiral of its leader, Dutch, Red Dead Redemption 2 told a harrowing tale of life, honor, and loyalty in the Wild West. Even without an expertly crafted narrative, the title is propped up by its sheer attention to detail. This ranges from Arthur's personal hygiene and fitness to the world itself, crafted with excellent quests and gorgeous vistas. It may not be outright perfect, but Red Dead Redemption 2 comes close and is the finest open-world game this generation has seen. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.